From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Veronica Graff, and tonight we take a look back at the top stories from our Borderlands team. From a look at migrant medical costs to how music is helping students on the Navajo Nation.
State of emergencies, an increase of family units crossing, all of this adding to the humanitarian crisis at the border.
And this isn't only affecting government agencies or nonprofits that are dealing with the surge of migrants.
Cronkite News reporter Marcela Bayeto tells us how this is also impacting local hospitals and doctors.
According to Customs and Border Protection, Border Patrol is sending 63 migrants per day to medical facilities for additional treatment, making it the highest number they've ever seen. We headed down to Tucson to see how Border Patrol and medical professionals are adjusting to the influx of migrants crossing.
After a 2,000-mile journey from their native El Salvador, this mother and daughter have found refuge at Casa Alitas in Tucson. After being dropped off by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Ana Lando, a local EMT and Casa Alitas medical volunteer, runs a strep throat test on the 11-year-old girl.
We're here and we're giving them medical care because they deserve it, and they have, this isn't something that we're testing them in any way. It's just to make sure that they have the medical care, to make sure that they are healthy and happy and can continue on their journeys.
However, not all of the migrants crossing are treated by humanitarian aid groups. Whether detained immigrants are seeking asylum or not, many of them need medical care, something Border Patrol initially provides to a degree.
If it's determined that they need to go to a hospital, we'll contact the local ambulance company if it dictates so, and that individual will be transported to the local hospital, still in Border Patrol custody.
Border Patrol says with the increase in migrants crossing, they now have to spend more time and money transporting migrants to medical facilities.
If it's in the field and the agent identifies an immediate medical need, that EMT will be deployed to that location, either by driving there, or if it needs to be expedited, sometimes we have air assets available that can land, pick up that agent wherever he is and bring him to that scene to provide that medical care.
In the past 3 months, CBP has spent more than $4 million in salary expenses so their agents can transport and watch detainees while in the hospital. But that's only a fraction of the cost. CBP is projecting an almost $12 million price tag by September of this year. For nonprofits like Casa Alitas, most of their medicines, resources, and vaccines are donated.
We've been really fortunate in diverse ways about medications and resources of that nature. The Public Health Department, PEMA, has given us about 500 flu vaccinations initially.
There is a sense of safety and security, which many of these people have not had in a long, long time, and to be able to in any way provide that is an amazing experience.
Toda la botella, okay? Okay, thank you.
CBP says they're currently on track to refer 31,000 people for medical treatment this year. For comparison, in fiscal year 2018, they only referred about 12,000. In the broadcast center, Marcela Bayeto, Cronkite News.
The Department of Homeland Security announced it's moving forward with plans to use military funds in order to build border barriers in sections of Arizona and New Mexico, triggering reactions from both environmental groups and Arizona lawmakers. Cronkite News reporter Hattie Meyer tells us more about what this could look like in our state.
11 miles near Yuma, Arizona are included in the waivers issued by the Department of Homeland Security, circumventing environmental laws in place in order to build and replace barriers in that area. The decision sparking outrage from conservation groups like the Center for Biological Diversity, which has sued the Trump administration over the emergency declaration to fund border walls.
The Trump administration has just cast aside the most important environmental laws in our nation's history with the stroke of a pen. Borderlands residents and the wildlife that live here are now no longer protected by fundamental laws like the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and the Endangered Species Act.
In the waivers filed, DHS identifies the Yuma sector as, quote, an area of high illegal entry. In fiscal year 2018 alone, it states the United States Border Patrol apprehended over 26,000 illegal aliens in the Yuma sector. The document also says the existing barriers will be replaced with an 18 to 30-foot barrier that employs a more operationally effective design that is intended to meet Border Patrol's operational requirements, end quote. The barriers are being funded by the Department of Defense following President Trump's emergency declaration in February. For his part, Representative Raul Grijalva put out a statement saying in part, quote, "The Trump administration consistently stoops to new lows when it comes to building the president's vanity wall, even if it endangers the public health of our communities in the environment we call home." By waiving landmark environmental laws like the Clean Air Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, and the Endangered Species Act, President Trump is sending a clear message to border residents. His political agenda is more important than their homes, health, and livelihoods, end quote.
Unfortunately, it's really become the norm that borderlands residents and the wildlife here watch their rights evaporate overnight in order to rush construction of a completely unnecessary, utterly senseless border wall.
In Phoenix, Hattie Meyer, Cronkite News.
Last month, the federal government announced it awarded contracts of nearly $1 billion to replace short barriers with tall fences in certain areas.
The southern border has seen an influx of immigrants over the last several months, and officials say they expect to make up to 1 million arrests by the end of this year.
President Donald Trump has threatened to shut down the U.S.-Mexican border if Mexico doesn't immediately stop the flow of undocumented immigration.
If the president were to close down the southern border, it would likely have major implications for Arizona.
Cronkite News reporter John Cardinelli spoke with several local experts who break down the potential impact. John?
The impact of a border shutdown would be felt across the board, affecting our state's political, social, and economic ties with Mexico.
Massive caravans walking right through Mexico. So Mexico's tough. They can stop them, but they chose not to. Now they're going to stop them. And if they don't stop them, we're closing the border.
President Trump has made it clear he's considering closing the southern U.S. border as a way to deal with what his administration calls a crisis surrounding the increased number of migrant families seeking asylum. The possibility of a border shutdown has local experts, like ASU professor Alexander Avina, studying what that could really look like.
Borders also, the way it's set up, can also facilitate certain modes of transactions or interactions, right? Mostly limited to these trans-border cities, right? So if Trump was to cut off this interaction, it's going to hurt everyday people on a political, economic, and social level.
And on a financial level as well. Millions of dollars would be at stake if the border is closed. It's an idea Governor Doug Ducey is not keen on.
Well, of course I don't want to see the border close. I mean, I've said 1,000 times or more, Mexico is our #1 trading partner ×4. So I want to see us continue to be able to trade, but the border does need attention. There is a crisis at the border. It's a humanitarian crisis, and Congress needs to act on this.
Presuming that it's a long shutdown, this is a very big deal for Arizona. Mexico is Arizona's largest trading partner by like a factor of 4. It's not close. It's $15 billion of trade. It's everything from auto parts to agricultural produce.
Aside from the financial impact, Avina says closing down the border with Mexico could have serious consequences on the relationship with our neighbor to the south.
Socially and politically, this sends a terrible message to Mexico. Right? The U.S. needs to have a cordial working relationship with the Mexican government. And actually, the current Mexican government, even though it presents itself as being more progressive or leftist, they have been really patient with the Trump administration. They have tried to not engage in the name calling and the fighting because they recognize that this is a really important relationship that they cannot afford to turn into a negative one.
A border shutdown would effectively close all the ports of entry, not allowing anyone to cross by car, bus, or on foot heading north or south. This, of course, wouldn't include the expansive areas in between cross points, potentially rerouting the flow of migrants towards much more treacherous terrains. In the broadcast center, John Cardinelli, Cronkite News.
Expect more troops on the border to help keep residents safe. That's the word from President Donald Trump yesterday while in San Antonio.
Now today, Vice President Mike Pence is visiting Nogales to see the issues firsthand. Cronkite News reporter Austin Westfall is in Nogales and attended the briefing.
Right now, I'm driving through the desert in the Vice President's motorcade. We're en route to the border where immigration officials are going to give him a tour. The Vice President said earlier at a press conference that there's an immigration crisis on the southern border and it's causing a national security threat.
We have a broken system. We have a porous border. You saw the President's determination to secure funding for a wall, and I know there'll be some 80 miles between Tucson and Yuma sector where we'll be building physical barriers in the next year, but we call on Congress today to do your job. And courageous men and women of our Customs and Border Patrol are doing their job every day. President Trump has done his job securing the funding to support your efforts and to build a wall. But now it's time for Congress to do their job, to come together on a bipartisan basis and address this very real crisis for the sake of the American people, for the sake of our security, and to end this crisis of illegal immigration on our southern border.
The Vice President will fly out of Tucson around 5 p.m. tonight en route to Omaha, Nebraska, where he's going to be talking with flood victims. In Nogales, Austin Westfall, Cronkite News.
We begin with our big story tonight, bringing you the latest on the sewage problems down at the border.
As Austin Westfall reports, this isn't just an Arizona problem. Austin?
Last month, Cronkite News reported on a sewage overflow in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, intermittently flowing into and contaminating the Nogales Wash in Arizona. As Mexican officials still work toward a fix to that problem, I visited a different area along the border seeing a similar issue, Imperial Beach in Southern California. The smell of sewage in the area is overwhelming at times, and locals aren't happy about it.
It's putrid, it's pungent, it's pretty gross. Like it just smells toxic.
William Bay has lived in Imperial Beach for years, and he's fed up with his favorite beach smelling rotten.
I haven't been able to surf in months.
The nasty smell originates just over the border, and it's being carried into Imperial Beach courtesy of the Tijuana River. Dustin Busa works at Tin Fish Restaurant, located at the very end of the pier.
People will comment, even when it's not raining, that it kind of smells bad here. But especially during the rainy season, when that sewage is washing out into the ocean, there have been times where it's kind of unbearable to walk down the pier.
Busa says authorities already have had to temporarily close the beach several times this year because of the contaminated water.
I think it was 2 days ago, it was closed. The beach was closed, and it was really warm out. We should have been busy, but we weren't.
Not only is it a problem for surfers and for the people that swim and the beachgoers, but it's the residents. It smells.
Right here in Tijuana isn't exactly where the problem lies, but it is where it starts. Right now, there's brown water flowing into the Tijuana River, and this body of water leads into the Pacific Ocean at Imperial Beach.
Herman Lazola Marquez is with the Government Public Works Agency in Tijuana. He says the last time sewage flowed into the river was in December.
When there's a lot of precipitation, the ocean recedes and the water mixes with the sewage water. That clogs the pumps because they're not designed to withstand that kind of pressure.
When the pipes clogged about 4 months ago, about 68 gallons of sewage was entering the Tijuana River per second.
That was on a Monday. By Thursday, it was just over 8.5 liters. We tackled and repaired the part.
Lazola Marquez insists no sewage has been discharged into the U.S. since that incident, but the smell remains. And the beaches closest to the mouth of the Tijuana River have not reopened.
The only crisis that we are suffering here in the border region is the border sewage crisis.
Paloma Aguirre is a member of the Imperial Beach City Council. In March, the city joined the state of California suing the United States section of the International Boundary Water Commission, the international body responsible for cross-border water territories along the southern boundary with Mexico. The city saying they are taking the commission to court in order to force them to do what they were supposed to do years ago, which is comply with federal environmental laws and stop these sewage spills once and for all.
We will not stop fighting until this issue is solved, because we all deserve to have high quality of life.
Now, Councilwoman Aguirre told Cronkite News that the IBWC has tried to dismiss that lawsuit on 2 occasions. A judge denied them both times. IBWC Commissioner Jane Harkins said she could not make a comment since the lawsuit is still in litigation. Austin Westfall, Cronkite News.
The Arizona Department of Environmental Quality put out a high pollution advisory yesterday, alerting of the hazards blowing dust can have, adding to our air pollution.
A recent study found that minorities are inhaling more air pollution than non-white Hispanics. This is leading to medical problems such as asthma and cancer. Marcela Bayeto spoke with a Phoenix family that knows firsthand the negative breathing effects dirty air can have.
With all this traffic and buses in Phoenix, the city's air pollution is becoming a bigger problem, especially for minorities like 18-year-old Angelica Beltran Cuevas.
They found out that I had a lot of
bad asthma coming from the buses, specifically from the diesel, the exhaust fume that was coming out.
She's one of the more than 174,000 Arizona youths who have asthma, according to the Arizona Department of Health Services.
People don't make the connection that your environment affects your health until it literally does. There's a lot of people, a lot of kids in South Phoenix who have asthma.
A recent study by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found non-Hispanic whites experience 17% less pollution exposure when compared to minorities. The study shows African Americans are exposed an average of 56% more to pollution, and Hispanics the most, with 63%.
Basically, we have kind of a situation where white people are causing more of the pollution and Black and Hispanic people are being exposed to more of it.
Beltran Cuevas has lived through what the study describes as pollution inequity.
If you were to go somewhere where it was mostly white dominated, for example, Scottsdale, there's not many buses.
On the other hand, in South Phoenix, where her family lives, Beltran Cuevas says the emissions and fumes from the buses, gas stations, and factories all add up, creating more and more pollution. An air pollution advisory by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality went into effect this week due to high levels of dust and particles in the air, which can especially affect those who live with asthma, like Beltran Cuevas.
So we're fighting for schools to take the initiative and leadership and introduce electrical vehicles. I think that's the path forward. It's just looking at the technology and the innovations and the leadership of people who are asking for this.
It's affecting everybody, Caucasians, Black people, Asians, Hispanics, it's not just us.
In Phoenix, Marcela Baedo, Cronkite News.
In February, the city of Nogales requested the concertina wire placed on the U.S. border be taken down, but U.S. Customs and Border Patrol have refused to remove it. Cronkite News reporter John Cardinelli has more on what the future holds for the city. John?
While there has been a formal petition done, the city of Nogales finds itself in a difficult situation. We spoke to local residents, a local business owner, and a city councilman to find out more about the new reality Nogales is dealing with.
Corey's, our bridal store, has been here since 1968, and La Cinderella since 1947.
For decades, the Corey family has owned and operated the two businesses, serving the border region between Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora.
We have customers as far as Hermosillo and even more south, and customers from Phoenix that visit us when they're here.
But the landscape in front of Corey's drastically changed last November after Customs and Border Patrol installed this concertina wire all along the existing border fencing.
The razor wire that went up was I guess initially very shocking and kind of scary because we didn't know what the impact would be. But thankfully, our customers, I think, of ambos Nogales, both sides of the border, are very unified, and they don't hold that against us.
The sight of the wire and additional border surveillance is jarring for many Nogales residents.
I don't think it's a good thing. For me, adding extra fencing is racist against Mexicans.
In February, the city of Nogales unanimously voted to have the concertina wire removed immediately. Fast forward 3 months, and the wiring is still there.
I don't think we can win it in court, to tell you the truth, this particular issue. Now, there's some issues at the border with people coming across and being delayed. There's some issues there that I think violate our Constitution.
Nogales Councilmember Dr. Marcelino Verona Jr. has lived in Nogales his whole life and says there's really nothing the city can do at this point to get the wire removed since it's installed on federal property.
It's not that I don't think the community is anti the concertina wire. We don't like our community to look like an enhanced prison system. All right? We should be welcoming the people who can cross legally.
Despite the city's vote for the wire to be removed, some residents do recognize the need for additional security along the border.
I do think it's a good idea because a lot of people don't adhere to the rules and they continue jumping the fence. If they get hurt trying to cross over, they shouldn't be attempting to do it in the first place.
In addition to the wire, some Nogales business owners also point to an additional problem that's affecting their bottom line, forcing some stores to close.
We've been affected for several years now, mainly due to the long border wait times. So the pedestrian crossing is very unpredictable as well as the vehicle crossing. But we depend on pedestrians largely. So, you know, for them to wait 2 or 3 hours at a time is very difficult on them, and over time we feel that effect.
Our reporting has found that there is no time set for the removal of that concertina wire, so it is unclear when and if that is going to happen. Live from the digital desk, John Cardinelli, Cronkite News.
We received information from Border Patrol that they were providing over 70 individuals this morning to the shelter, putting us extremely over our capacity, and just got word that they will be providing 50 more by the end of the day. The transportation network is just insufficient in order to keep up with the demand, and the backlog of people staying at the shelter has created this capacity issue.
The immigration issue reaches the boiling point in Yuma, Arizona. Mayor Doug Nichols signed an emergency proclamation yesterday. He says there's just too many people and not enough resources. Nichols is asking the federal government for resources, possibly even help from FEMA.
The city's emergency shelter can hold 150 people, but was already over capacity before the notification from Border Patrol. Austin Westfall is in Yuma at the Salvation Army, which is also hosting migrant families, taking in about 1,300 just in the last 3 weeks.
The actual location where the Salvation Army is housing migrants is kept a secret. So I was asked to meet with their captain at Catholic Community Services, a humanitarian aid organization that's with the Catholic Church, with several locations, including one right here in Yuma. Now, the Salvation Army says they're housing about 200 migrants right now, but they're only comfortable with about 150 max. They're hoping that the new emergency declaration might help secure more resources.
Right, it opens up an avenue of revenue source on a state and possibly a federal level that we can sustain or even alleviate some of the pressure that we're experiencing right now. It costs money to take care of people.
Brazil says all the migrants under the Salvation Army are families. The ratio is 3 children to every 1 adult. And Mayor Nichols says that with this emergency declaration, he hopes to get state and federal authorities to help him with this influx of migrants. In Yuma, Austin Westfall, Cronkite News.
As the topic of immigration continues to dominate much of our national conversation, one local artist and professor is using art to tell the story of being an immigrant. Cronkite News reporter Walter Panate tells us more about it.
The name of the project is Barriers and Bridges. They've given it this name after several of the students said they felt people were either building barriers against them, while on the other hand, communities have worked together to build bridges towards better understanding.
We're all connected. We all have similar stories, and we all need each other. I mean, you can't fight hate with hate.
That's the message Hugo Medina has left emblazoned in this Phoenix mural. The work of art inspired by the immigration stories shared by the students he teaches at ASU. Medina says the creation of the piece has been a collaborative effort between the muralists and volunteers.
Art can bring out what is most humane of a person. Their feelings, their well-being, their story.
ASU senior Yolati Perez says her mom came to the U.S. when she was pregnant with her. She says the experience of being an immigrant is something that's deeply affected her and her family.
I've seen the prejudices and the racism that happens when you're an immigrant. That's why it was very important for me to participate in this event.
Everyone came to pick up one of these spray cans to create a mural. Those who helped create it hope that anyone who comes across it will see the true meaning of it.
Medina teaches a class titled Facing Immigration, where he encourages students from different cultural backgrounds to explore their own immigration story and tell it through art.
I'm hoping to have people have conversations about immigration, migration, and humanity. Because in reality, we're all humans, we all migrate.
With the migrant situation that we're having, hopefully we can shed some light with this mural and help bring some happiness and some joy.
Many Arizona schools provide music classes for students, but for children growing up in the Navajo Nation, access to music education can almost be non-existent. Cronkite News reporter Hattie Meyer went to Window Rock, Arizona, where one unique program is changing that.
Currently, more than 40 children are participating in this program, giving many of them, for the first time, the opportunity to bring the magic of music into their lives.
It's really nice to play music.
It just helps you not to be like scared, nervous, or like not to be sad.
For 14-year-old Lily Williams and other Native children living in the Navajo Nation, life isn't always easy.
We've seen a lot of children in the area being abused or suicidal.
But with donated instruments, volunteer instructors, and a few hours once a month, the Native American Music Fund is trying to make things a little brighter.
Now we want to gift back to the community and provide a safe place for the children to come at least once a month.
Michelle Morgan Flowers founded the program in 2013 and says it's more than just an escape for the children. For many, this is the only access they have to music education.
But a lot of the children are in boarding schools or other facilities that do not have music electives. A lot of our children are watching YouTube videos and teaching themselves.
Through partnerships with music companies and public donations, the kids get to take instruments home with them. But Morgan Flowers says this too can be a struggle. Approximately 60,000 Navajo live without electricity. But despite the challenges, this program helps bring hope for the kids and the adults who teach them.
So you can feel the vibrations, and when everybody's smiling at you and giving you their attention, it's just the best warming feeling that you can get.
What a gift to be able to bring the families together. It's a beautiful thing when we can do that for our children and the families here.
The Fund's next music class is scheduled for June 22nd at the Navajo Nation Museum in Window Rock. These classes are all free. In the Broadcast Center, Hattie Meyer, Cronkite News.
That's it for this special edition of Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.